Hello and welcome back to another episode debrief where I'm going to go through your comments from last Friday's main channel video. That should be this one right here. I'm going to respond to some of your comments, answer many of your questions, and just add some more context to the situation of that main video. Now, unfortunately, this week's or last Friday's video was a question and answer video while I was, sorting through a bunch of books. So it was a little bit more focused on me. It was kind of an opportunity for the viewer to get to know me a bit better, which means that this debrief also might lean towards being a little bit more Shannon Makes centric than normal. The good news is that this Friday's video tomorrow on the main channel is back to renovation, which means that next Thursday's debrief, if I manage to squeeze one in, is also going to be more house centric. But that is just your disclaimer here. There's not going to be as much house stuff just because of the nature of the main channel video. But there were still a lot of very interesting comments, questions, all that good stuff. So I think we're still going to have a good time. Let's go ahead and dive in and look at the categories of comments we've got here, because once again, like every video, the comments do tend to kind of sort themselves into different categories. So we've got variations on Rice Krispie recipes. We've got a lot of love for the cookbook that I found, people trying to guess the mystery recipe. I've got a whole category of things that viewers have found in their own books while they were sorting through houses and, estates and whatnot. And then there's the whole broad, lovely, controversial topic of misogyny. So with that being said, let's jump right in. As always, there will be a unabridged version over on my Patreon. This is the, slightly shorter but still very entertaining version here for free for everyone to watch. And let's start with some Rice Krispie variations. Why not? Let's start on a fun note here. So I had a ton of suggestions. I got a lot of great ideas. One of you even shared your Rice Krispie Obsessions Pinterest board with me, so thank you very much. I've had a lot of fun reading through these. I will say that the overwhelming suggestion was just to try other types of cereal besides Rice Krispies. I have a recipe here for brown butter, rosemary, and thyme Rice Krispie bars, which sounds absolutely delicious. There are also pecan pieces in here. I'll throw it up on screen if you want to screenshot that and try it for yourself. Also had a lot of people adding variations on peanut butter and chocolate into them. So oftentimes it was adding peanut butter into the marshmallow mix and then sometimes adding chocolate chips in as well, or other times like melted chocolate on top as a layer. Lots of interesting ideas there. Somebody suggested a Canadian YouTuber called Glenn and Friends Cooking that has a Rice Krispie recipe that involves melting Mars bars instead of marshmallows, which color me intrigued. That sounds absolutely delicious. I might have to give it a try. I'll throw the comment up there. So if you want to check it out, you can also go find that YouTube channel. And then a overwhelming amount of you also suggested just simply browning the butter before making the Rice Krispies. Apparently it creates a really great depth of flavor, and someone else said that it makes the end result taste like a perfectly roasted marshmallow. So that sounds really interesting. I will have to do that. And then somebody else had a good suggestion for a trick for browning butter easily is to toast dried milk powder in a dry frying pan until it's toasty brown. Then you add it to the butter in whatever you're making, Rice Krispie treats or with sage for gnocchi. This person says they do a couple cups at a time and keep it in a mason jar for easy use. I think that is a great tip. I do love the hack of doing a bunch of it at a time and keeping it in a mason jar. I don't know if you're supposed to keep that mason jar then in the fridge, but it is still just dried milk powder, so probably not. Either way, great tip. We'll definitely be trying the brown butter and might also try toasting the milk powder as a hack for that. So thank you everyone for the comments. For the ideas. We might be seeing some Shannon Bakes in the future. Who knows? I do actually think by complete coincidence I have a Rice Krispie segment coming up in a video shortly here. So good timing on that one. Also have just a really nice comment here from Muffin Chucker. So this was, I believe, in response to where I said I was looking forward to the point in the renovation where I would be able to do some of the more aesthetic interior decoration bits alongside the more knees deep in mud and clay bits. Because it just would be like fun to be able to do both simultaneously. And Muffin Chucker said, I'm much more interested in the work than the reveal, so thank you for showing the hard stuff. I really appreciate that. I am so glad that those of you who are here joining me on the channel and slogging through the mud and clay with me have stuck with me so far, because yeah, I know for a fact that if I was at the point where I could mostly be doing really aesthetic decoration surface level things, that I would be getting a lot more views, because there's just a lot more people that are interested in that. It's visually way more pleasing than seeing me down in my poorly lit basement digging through tons and tons of clay. So I'm quite appreciative for everybody who is here and who is enjoying the slog with me and sticking through it, and I really hope that you're gonna also enjoy it when I get to the fun, pretty parts, and I have no doubt that you will. So just really enjoy it when people express their appreciation for the process and showing the amount of effort and time that it takes, because it is a slow process. Then there was a lot of love for the cookbook. Many of you suggested that it was, in fact, the prize that I was searching for. Now, obviously, I was flipping through all of the books, hoping to find some cash stashed away between the pages. I did not, unfortunately, find any cash, even though I found a lot of receipts. But some of you suggested that, you know, that book in and of itself, that was the prize I didn't know that I was looking for. Apparently, it's a pretty popular, common one. It's been going for many years. There are many different editions of it. It's also apparently known as the Fanny Farmer cookbook, and a lot of you are jealous of the vintage of mine, as well as the fact that it has all the handwritten, you know, notes and recipes in it. So it would be kind of fun to try some recipes from there at some point. Don't worry, I still have it. I am holding on to it. I loved it. I will not be donating it or giving it to Max Miller, who many of you also mentioned. He would probably love it, but he also probably has a million versions of it already. Just knowing the tininess of my channel compared to his and how much already I have people wanting to give me things, I can't even imagine. He must be swamped with people trying to give him cookbooks. So I will not be giving it to him. I will be hanging on to it and maybe trying a recipe or two out from it, including potentially maybe the mystery recipe that was on the inside that I read off. This one here. 2 cups buttermilk, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon soda, 2 tablespoons molasses, flour to thicken. Now, many of you tried guessing or giving your best educated guesses as to what the recipe was for. Cassandra said that they thought it was either for griddle cakes or possibly biscuits. The addition of molasses makes me lean in the griddle cake direction. Hypergen says they thought it was pancakes. Buttermilk and soda make bubbles, molasses for flavor, and flour to thicken to pancake consistency. Meanwhile, we've got Katrina from Denmark, who is guessing that it's actually for Irish buttermilk farls, and she included a link here to somebody making this exact recipe. Chrissy Francis guessed that it was old-fashioned milk gravy. Milk gravy was a huge thing in the Great Depression. Milk gravy on homemade bread was a meal when nobody could afford meat. And then lastly, we have Awkward Burb, who says that it might be some kind of quick bread and that they might try it out. So the fate of this recipe lies in your hands, Awkward Burb. Not really, no pressure, but just saying, if you do try it, we would all love to hear what exactly it turned out to be. So maybe there will be an update in a future debrief if Awkward Burb does in fact try out the recipe and we figure out once and for all what it is for. Also, while we're talking about books, I just spent the day 2 days ago in Halifax and started out the day with a trip to a combination bookstore and cafe, and it was super cute. It had some new books, it had some used books, it didn't get anything from Amazon. It had a Beauty and the Beast style ladder to reach the books on the top shelves, and I walked away not only having had a delicious cappuccino, but also with 3 new books, which I am very excited about. So there's the bookstore's bookmark that they gave me, Trident, Bookseller, and Cafe. The first book I got was the next of the Hunger Games series. I was super excited about this because when I found that it came out, I thought about buying it on Amazon because I'm just super impatient, and then I was like, I just cannot give the money to Amazon. And I knew that I could get it at a small local bookstore. I thought I was gonna have to wait till I was back in Montreal, but I'm not. So I got that one, very excited. Then I also got this one. It's a memoir written from somebody pretty high up in the ranks of Facebook, a cautionary tale of power, greed, and lost idealism. I have heard very good things about this. I have heard it's absolutely captivating and horrifying, and I cannot wait to dive into this one. A complete difference from the horror story. And then the last one I got is actually a used book. It's called The Winter Guest, and it appears to be combination historical fiction and like moody mystery tale. So I'm very excited about that as well. You do know that I love a good historical fiction, and this one sounded intriguing, and it was also very cheap because it was used. So that's my book haul. I'm very excited to start reading these just as soon as I finish the book I'm currently on, which we're almost there. So that was a very fun, brief book update, and now back to the comments. Then we next had an entire category of comments from you, the viewer, sharing things that you have found when you were going through relatives' books or estates or doing your own various renovations. And some of them were really fun. So I was like, let's sit down and read through them together because these are really entertaining. So Janice, for example, found 100 grand in banknotes. That was really cool. Tina said, I found a life insurance policy in my dad's books after he passed for my grandma. It was great. It paid for her nursing home. Great, eh? Absolutely love that. Someone else said they bought a book at a yard sale once, found $100 inside. I made $99.75. I volunteer at a thrift store and find all sorts of things hidden in books. They're my favorite boxes to go through. Yeah, they would absolutely be my favorite boxes to go through as well, and even more when you make $99.75. That's my definition of a great day. A really sweet comment from Emily Smith, who said, this video makes me think of my Nana. For one of her birthdays, I got her a first edition of a book, and it came in this beautiful collector's sleeve. When my Nana passed, my mom was cleaning out her flat and found the book with a post-it note on it saying, for Emily. So my mom gave the book back to me. Turns out my Nana had hidden 500 pounds in its pages. I often wonder if she added to it slowly, intending to give the book back to me at some milestone, or if it was her intention for me to have it when she passed. Guess I'll never know. Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to know the answer to that question, but I do think it is safe to say that she really did absolutely intend that money to go to you at some point, and it's just a question if she had already planned a moment, a milestone, as you said, when she was going to give it to you, or if it was just in her passing. We will never know, but it was a very sweet thought, and what a kind Nana. Some other success stories, we have D. Wonder Mom, who said, like yourself, when my relatives died, we had to go through everything thoroughly as money was hidden in all sorts of places. One family member had hidden 20,000 Australian dollars in notes and coins. Similarly, Debbie said, once I helped a friend clear out her parents' house. We were working in a basement workshop. She was pulling rolled up newspapers in the joist cross members, and I was stuffing them in a garbage bag. After several bags, I dropped one, and all this money fell out. We were shocked. With mouths agape, we decided to have lunch, and then we revised our plan, going through each paper, book, blueprint, and tool chest. We found nearly $30,000 in both paper, coins, and antique coins. What a haul. Then we also went out for dinner. I mean, heck yeah, I would absolutely go out for dinner after just uncovering $30,000 hidden in a basement workshop. These are the stories that I live for. This is what I was hoping to find when I was also sorting through my books, but alas, it was not meant to be. Then we have an entire category of librarians who, as we can all probably imagine, have some of the grossest, most gruesome stories of things left in books, because people aren't going to stop stuffing strange things in books or using them as bookmarks, but nobody is going to be putting, their prized possessions or a stash of money into books that are just going to be returned to the library. So inevitably, they tend to find the weirder, grosser things. So one common thread was a lot of people saying that they save the things that they find when they're librarians, and one person said they want to decoupage them onto a bookshelf. Another person said that they created framed collages of all the things they find. This was a common thread of like keeping and displaying in libraries all the goofy stuff that they find in the books. But Wendy responded to one of these and said, I have also worked in libraries and have found disgusting things in books. Bloody dental floss, used Kleenex, etc. Beware. And then Tess also said, whenever I see anyone flip through books, I'm reminded of an old library myth of somebody finding a cheese sandwich in a returned book. To which Donna responded, I work in a school library. A cheese sandwich would not be the worst. That award would go to moldy bananas. Oof, the smell that brings to mind, like opening a book and just finding a moldy, rotten banana, is disgusting. And then Catherine responded to that and says that she was a librarian. She found bills, both 20s and 100s, credit cards and birthday cards, and once a tampon. Fortunately, it was unused, thank goodness, although she writes the string was handy. Yeah, I can imagine it was. Might not want to put that one on the display, however. So yeah, that was very fun. Librarians doing great work out there. Everybody send your local librarian some love and hope that they are not the one to find a moldy banana in their book today. Ooh, one viewer definitely just gave me, I think, a new habit that I'm going to adapt. So Jazanne wrote, I always leave something from my travel in guides I borrow from the public library, like a receipt in Greek on a guide in Athens, or a tag from the Tintin boutique on a Belgium travel guide. Just a little something for the future traveler that the book has had travel in that destination before. So I absolutely love the idea. I personally don't ever take out travel guides, but I do frequent little free libraries in many countries around the world. Like most of my reading actually comes from little free libraries, and I think I'm going to start doing that. Like I'm going to start using local bits of ephemera or receipts or whatever, postcards as bookmarks, and then I'm going to leave it in there for the next person to find, because at this point I have basically, a cross-border transport system of books that I pick up in little free libraries. So it could be kind of fun to also include, a receipt from Norway or a postcard from Germany, or I don't know, a little bit of something from here in Nova Scotia as I travel with my books and inevitably leave them in other countries in order to pick up new ones. But speaking actually of the little free library, I got a couple people, including Anna here, who recommended that I build a little free library of my own. So Anna writes, consider building a community library in front of your house. They can be cute and serve your community. There's lots of interesting books among the collection. Yeah, so absolutely, it is already in the plans. I mean, I had wanted to do this long before this video came out. I've been collecting slowly inspiration as I come across really cute little free libraries in the wild on my travels. And yeah, I've always wanted to have one out front of the house. It's a busy enough street that it gets a fair amount of foot traffic. Also, it's got a sidewalk in front of it, which definitely helps. And people do pass pretty frequently, so I think it would be a great success. I do think people would take them. I do think actually some people might give them back as well. So I'm definitely willing to try. like I said, been collecting some inspiration. So my favorite ones are the ones where the library itself is a miniature replica of the house that it belongs to. I've seen a few of those and they always make me giggle. They're, usually pretty well done, and I've always thought that it would be kind of cool to do that. However, I will say that mine, at least my first version, will not be that fancy, simply because I don't have time. I would rather get a simpler version out there and get people accustomed to looking in it and using it, taking and giving, and then eventually down the road when I have more time, then I could consider making one that's like an actual replica of my house. But the first version, I think it's going to be very much like a cartoon house box with a triangle roof sort of situation. However, that does not mean it's not going to be creative, because I have a couple really gorgeous ones that I have found. If I can find the picture, I will throw it up for you here. This is the one, my main inspiration image that I found, this one in the wild while I was out walking one day, and I loved the colors that were on it. It was so bright, it was so cheerful. Even the little knob was just so colorful. So I would absolutely love to do this, add it to the front yard, just brighten up the yard, and yeah, like get that a little bit sense of community out there from everyone walking by. So that's definitely on the list. And then also, while we're on the topic of books, let's swing by and take a stop at Kimberly's comment. She wrote, "This video reminded me of a quote, 'No person who can read is ever successful at cleaning out an attic.'" Now, I would like to disagree. I take issue with this statement because I love reading and I have successfully cleaned out an attic. Although upon further reflection, I will state that none of the books were stored in the attic. So that might be the secret to my success. Kimberly wrote on that being a voracious bibliophile, going through all those books would take much longer. I couldn't help looking at some of the titles, seeing if there was anything that I would need. There was not, but I would still have loved to be there live. So I will say, I think the reason that I was able to do this fairly quickly is that the vast majority of those boxes of books had already been sorted through. In that first video, actually the video where I found the German war bond, was it a war bond? I don't think it was a war bond, but where I found the German bond, that was in that video. I was already sorting through those books and pulling out the ones that I wanted to keep. Now there must have been at least one or two boxes in there that I hadn't sorted through. The one where I found the Canadian War Spies novel and the cookbook. Those two I hadn't seen before, so I think one box snuck in there that I maybe just didn't sort through, but for the most part, I'd already pulled out everything that I wanted to keep, so I knew that I could just flip through everything pretty quickly. Now that being said, I have now just realized that I actually need to go and do a second pass and pull out anything that I want to save to put in the eventual free little library, because there's a lot of like Tom Clancy novels. There's, even like the romance novels would do pretty well out in the community library, but things like the typing book, which a lot of you did say you recognized and gave you trauma from your high school days, but like that book or the algebra book, some of the like more dry and honestly at this point outdated books, they're not going to be going in the free little library because they would just sit there and rot and nobody would take them. Those are going to get donated to, probably a thrift store, but I'll do a pass through and I'll pull out like the novels, the fiction, all that kind of stuff, and save that for the free little library. Then lastly, we have the ever so controversial topic of misogyny in renovation. So there were a lot of thoughts on this topic because, of course, I did mention it. I said I've been getting a lot of comments lately, and they are, skewing misogynistic here. And some people were quite offended on that. Other people saluted me for calling it out, and then others were, a little bit more middle of the road. So I thought, let's dig into this a little bit. I think it is kind of an interesting topic, and it does reveal some interesting things about just the realities of not only our society, but also filming in the renovation situation. Let's look at the viewers who argued that it was not misogyny. And I think the most interesting one to look at here is by Implied Confessions, who wrote, "I don't think misogyny applies to people who comment on Phil doing work. Misogyny is hatred and prejudice against women. A better, more accurate term would be stereotype. It's a historical and common belief or view that men typically held and hold more physically laborious roles. People have the misconception that men are more inclined to be good at certain types of tasks instead of viewing them as learned skills. Construction has historically been a task held by men. It's not unreasonable for people to stereotypically place Phil more prominently in that role." And I think it's an interesting point and one that is worth discussing, because I think whether it's misogyny or stereotyping does definitely depend on the specific viewer that's leaving the comment and what specifically they are saying. So there were definitely plenty of these that could, veer more into the category of stereotyping as opposed to outright misogyny. And I will also agree that the two examples that I pulled off of the top of my head were not the best examples. They were a little bit gentler, they were a little bit more mild, and they do definitely lean a bit more towards, these could be looked at as examples of stereotyping. It was kind of a perfect case of when you're put on the spot and asked for an example, you can never think of the good example, even though you've seen tons of them. The two examples that I could think of off the top of my head were not the best examples, and I do definitely admit that. However, I will say that, at what point does stereotyping become misogyny? Because if you are being constantly shown a woman that, intelligently and thoroughly explains what the problem is, what work will be done, why it's being done, how she's about to do it, and then you're also shown numerous on-screen examples of her physically doing that work, using that knowledge in the real world to fix the problem, wielding the tools to get it done, when does it stop becoming stereotyping and become misogyny? Because then at that point, it's just actively ignoring the evidence that's in front of your face to perpetuate the narrative that it's the male counterpart that is doing all of the work, or has all of the knowledge, or is paying for all the things. So it's kind of like a fuzzy line to me. And also, a couple people took issue with the fact that, calling the people leaving these comments misogynists is incorrect, it's opinionated, it's judgy. I will admit, I am quite opinionated, and for the most part, I actually keep my opinions pretty firmly off the internet. But also, I will point out that I didn't say that the people leaving these comments were misogynists, capital M misogynists. I specifically did not say that. I think that the comments are coming from a place, from just an upbringing in a culture, a society that was founded on basic principles of misogyny and racism and a bunch of other problematic issues. But I don't think that the people leaving these comments, for the most part, are trying to be misogynistic jerks. I just think that they're so raised in a world that is built on these principles that they don't actually see that they're doing it. And, for that reason, I do sometimes feel it's important to call it out. Like, for example, I have a really good one here. It just came in the other day. It's from somebody that is very nice, leaves comments frequently. I recognize her. And she left this comment with also the best of intentions, and I do believe she was also responding to the section of the video where I was talking about misogyny. And she writes, "Nobody should come to YouTube and tell DIYers what to do. That's the point of YouTube DIY. You both seem like competent people. Phil seems to have some real experience with tools." And so it was just I just read the comment and I was like, I know you mean well, but do you not see what you're doing here? And there were plenty of people that were in the camp, heck yeah, that was absolutely misogyny. And it's mainly coming from women or female presenting people that have faced real world misogyny in their everyday lives. They have lived through it and they see it when it happens and they're like, Yep, that's kind of screams misogyny. So we've got so many real world examples here. Tammy says, I hear all the time that I'm so lucky my husband can do stuff. It pisses me off because I can do as much and often no more than him. Yeah, hard relate to that, Tammy. Nicole says, good on you for calling out the misogynists. When I, as a single woman, bought my first house in the mid-90s, I had to sign a form certifying that there was no male relative responsible for my debts. I'm still angry about that all these years later. Also, plenty of women talking about, needing their husband's permission for medical procedures, getting the birth control pill, getting your tubes tied. Somebody said that their mother loudly and publicly cut up her Sears credit card right there in the store when they refused to put her first name on it instead of Mrs. My father's full name. That was back in the 1970s. Someone else said, I've had professionals refuse to come to the house for repairs unless a male family member was present. Single family household here, where am I supposed to get somebody male from? So insulting. So I do think that it is, there are plenty of examples in the real world, in my comment section, of actual misogyny. Now, I will say that all of these are much more targeted and specific and harsher examples of misogyny than anything I have cited. For the most part, people in my comments kind of seem to be doing an accidental misogyny as opposed to a very outright targeted and blatant misogyny. But nonetheless, it's all kind of stemming from the same place for the most part. And then there was kind of an interesting conversation. I had a similar conversation with a couple different viewers here, but people trying to figure out why Phil is presumed to be the expert. So in this conversation with this viewer, they suggested that maybe it's a presentation thing. You seem to address an issue before you begin, presenting an idea or a method to try, whereas he tends to tell what he already did and why. So, as I thought about this and was trying to, mull it over and explain it in the conversation, one of the tactics that I took, which is one that I kind of like to do because I do think it illuminates situations very clearly, is I've reversed the roles. So if the roles were reversed and a man talked to the camera at the beginning of the video and said that he was going to do something, everybody would assume that it was him who was actually going to do it. If Phil sat down and did the intro and said, this is the problem that we're going to be solving, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's why and what we're doing, people would assume that he was just doing it. There would be no reason to doubt that he had any lack of knowledge, right? That kind of flipping that roles there shed a little bit of light on it. It's interesting. I don't know. I was talking with a good friend about the situation, and because she's watched a few of the videos and then she watched a couple more with this in mind. And the one thing that she brought up was that I tend to say, we are going to do this. We are doing that. We have just done this. Whereas Phil always says, I did this. I'm going to do that. I tend to say we, whereas Phil tends to say I, which is mildly annoying because, we're both going to be doing the thing, which is why I say we. But it's also, I think, a function of the fact that I'm the one working the camera. So I am trying to I'm purposely trying to ask questions and give him good prompts to tell the camera what's going on. I get really good at asking leading questions, even though I know what the answer is going to be. I'm going to ask him, oh, hey, what are you doing? Oh, what is that? What's the next step here? To get him to give good audio clips back to the camera. But it's just that he doesn't return the favor. So it kind of can maybe contribute to this impression, When I think about how filming goes here on an average day, I tend to start out knowing, I'm going to need an intro. The viewer's going to want to know, what are we doing? What are we about to set out to do? What are our goals? It's kind of a nice beginning for the video, a little bit nicer than just like cold turkey jumping into the action. So I know that before we do any work, I'm gonna set up the camera on a tripod and tell people what we're going to do. But then once the work starts, it's much harder to stop all the work and be like, okay, Phil, stop working, stop making noise, just freeze or go upstairs or whatever for like 30 seconds, a minute, while I update people, while I tell people what we're doing, where we're at, what's going wrong, some random thought that I've had about, the clay that I'm working with. It's much harder to do that. It's very disruptive to the process of renovation. Already filming is quite disruptive. It slows us down a lot, and it can make certain people quite frustrated with how slow the work is going. So Phil's already a little bit annoyed at how slow things are because I have to film them. And then to ask him to like, okay, you have to stop everything and be really quiet while I film this update, it's a little bit annoying. What's much easier is for me to just grab the camera and turn around and ask him a few questions that give him great opportunities for some great audio clips. It's so much faster to do it that way. It's so much easier. So I think that does also lead to this this phenomenon where I'm talking as an intro, static with a tripod, a little bit more rehearsed or put together, a little bit less in the minute. And then when we're doing it, it does tend to be Phil talking because it's just so much less disruptive. It's so much quicker. We can just like get a little sound bite and move on with it. Whereas if it's me talking to the camera, everything has to stop. Tripod has to be set up. There's nobody asking me questions, so it doesn't come off quite as natural. It comes off a little bit more like rehearsed. And so, yeah, it's just like, it's an interesting problem that the renovations bring up. And I've been aware of it for a while, and I can't figure out a good way around it. I can't figure out a good way to keep the momentum of the renovations going while simultaneously being able to update people in the middle of it. I could obviously do what some renovations channels do and just slap a tripod in a corner and record the whole thing on time lapse. And I know that a lot of renovation channels do that, and some people really like watching that type of renovation. I personally do not. I find it super, super boring, and therefore I don't want to do that. But that does mean that my process of filming things is a lot more invasive, a lot slower. It is constant work. I'm constantly moving tripods and constantly getting new angles and new shots and trying to keep it interesting and moving along. And I do like a good time lapse, but I don't like the whole video to be time lapses. I'm like, maybe we can do 1 or 2 time lapses in the whole video. So that's gone a little bit off the rails, but that's kind of what the filming situation here at the house is like. So that's gonna do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this channel debrief, and I will catch you on the main channel tomorrow for another renovation video, and then we can debrief it back here next Thursday. Adios!